we're live. So welcome to episode, what is it? I think it's 4.
I'm going to go ahead and say a strong 4.
Okay, we're going with a solid episode 4.
Maybe a loose 5.
Loose 5, 4.5, 5, something along those lines. Some stuff happened in the Jiu Jitsu world the last couple of weeks.
It's been pretty busy.
We're going to talk about a couple things. SUG 11.
Yes, absolutely. I think we need to, obviously there was actually a lot of sleepers on that card. A lot of the early matches, there were some good matches. And one of the things, though, was towards the end, at the end of the main event, we had that tag team match, right? And that's kind of that's been one of the big talks of that, because we, for the first time in a minute, I've seen the tag team grappling happen before, but this was the first time I think it's ever been like big names on a major grappling event, and the main event is a tag team match. Am I correct on that? Is that like the first really big one, right?
Yeah.
So I think everybody was expecting a lot more, especially with who it was, right? We had Vinny Mag, Kyle Boehm, and Nicky Rod, and Craig Jones.
Yeah. And, so I was sitting down and I was watching it, and I didn't really know what the rule set was exactly. Obviously tag team, I understand that much.
I feel like it was kind of hard to follow.
It was a little hard to follow, but I was astounded that, I'm sitting here and I'm watching the, second or third time this has ever happened, and it's literally 4 of the best guys in the world that are, jumping in on this experiment that Chael is trying to, figure out and, see if it works. So, it was crazy seeing the 4 of them in there doing this. And it didn't quite work out for from a fan perspective.
No.
It worked out really well for one team.
Yeah, absolutely. For the one team, it kind of gave further bragging rights to a war that's kind of been going on for a while, you know. Vinny Mag and Kyle Boehm ended up taking the match. But the controversy on this is, it was, a lot of people are saying it's just because Nicky Rod hogged the mat. He hogged the ring. He refused to tag in Craig Jones. So Craig Jones actually never got any ring time in this match.
Right. Which is bizarre.
It's very bizarre, especially when you're going. So I look at it this way, right? If you looked at the beginning, right, we had Vinny Mag and Nicky Rod going at it.
Right.
Okay. There's not much we could say about Vinny Magalace that hasn't already been said. Vinny Mag is Vinny Mag.
Vinny Mag is Vinny Mag.
I feel like the big thing with this was there's a time and place where you have to kind of put your ego and pride aside, right? So when Kyle Boehm comes in, this guy's known for his leg game. He's a strong, up-and-coming competitor. Just off of looking at him, not only is he known for his leg game and his strength, but when you combine those two things together, that's a dangerous combination. Because when you have that kind of torque and that kind of, athleticism going into a very lethal game, you obviously would probably want somebody who's well-versed in that rolling with that person.
Right.
So, in this case, you have the best possible fucking person that you could have in your corner.
Right.
with Craig Jones. And we don't tag in.
Right.
So, the only thing I could think, I'm saying that, it was an obvious pride and machismo issue in my eyes. That's what I thought.
Okay. I mean, he definitely played into that, with the way that he reacted after the loss. He had a great line, and I love the rivalry. I love that he's selling it. I love that they're both selling it. He and Kyle and Vinny are all selling it. But he was like, they asked him about the loss, and he was like, it doesn't bother me. I smoked those bitches 2 weeks ago, or something like that. I don't know. It was pretty great, but yeah, it did speak of some hard-headedness on his part. I will say, though, that I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to give Craig the benefit of the doubt as well. That, in the interview afterwards, Craig said that he was really not feeling well, and that maybe he and Nicky talked about it before the match, and he was like, listen, I feel like shit. I don't even know if I can go out there and do this. If you can handle it, handle it.
Right.
But
that's kind of like a... See, I mean, I'm looking at that statement, right? And I'm looking at that as like maybe we're trying to save face in hindsight. Just because people wanted to see Craig Jones roll, man.
Yes.
Like I feel like if he would have, there's enough people on that squad within that team that know each other where if he wasn't feeling well and wanted to step down, I'm sure they could have gotten somebody to come in with Nicky Rod real quick.
Right.
So, I don't know. I'm not, I don't know. I like you said, I'd like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I just know as a fan, it was disappointing.
It was very disappointing. Yeah. So you got some notes that you wanted to talk about. What do you have written down?
Well, one of the big things that I wanted to speak about regarding Sub Underground was Boogie.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Ooh.
So I was I like Boogie, man. I like the Martinez brothers, man. I love Gio. I've been a fan for a while from those guys. When I knew that he was going to be rolling against Shields, I had my doubts. I was like, it's a tough get. Like, because Jake Shields, no joke, man. He's got ridiculous jiu-jitsu. He trains with the high-level jits guys. And when we went to OT, like that armbar, man. I mean, so what I really loved about this, and this is what I really want to talk about it, and this is kind of from a nerdy perspective. Okay. So one of the big things is that when we drill EBI OTs and when I've worked at finishers in the past, there's a certain way that when they break the arm bar, they go to finish, and it actually, from what I've gathered and what I've been told, it's based off of that infamous match at EBI with Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan, where Craig Jones almost broke Gordon Ryan's arm.
Right.
Now Gordon Ryan gets out.
Right.
And they attributed that specifically to the fact that it was the way that he had his legs triangled on the shoulder. So essentially they started finishing it opposite, so that if somebody does try to hitchhiker out, they end up running into the wedge as opposed to the lock, and they aren't able to roll underneath.
Right.
So in that match, that's exactly what you see, right? He breaks with that bicep crush like attempt. Then when it comes free, the leg that's by his head is bent 90 degrees across the shoulder.
Right.
And it's in a triangle fashion. Now, normally you would be like, well, the head's not trapped, right? But that's not the problem. That's not the point here. The point is the arm is already hyperextended.
Right.
So the crank is already on. So at this point in time, Jake Shields had an option, and that was to try to roll and corkscrew escape or hitchhiker, whatever they want to call it out. And he could not, because when he got there and he went to do that and went to follow his head, that shin shield, because of the position of the triangle, was in the way. And it was done.
Yeah.
I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah. And
well executed.
I really enjoyed the match because I thought it was a really exciting example of why EBI rules are, quite possibly the best rule set in the game right now. You saw Boogie really take control of regulation. He was working a lot of rubber guard. He was setting up his omoplatas and his go-go's, and Jake Shields just really he just had to posture out and try and reset every time.
I think it was nonstop attacks.
And it was nonstop attacks, and it was constantly Boogie's prerogative. He
never let him really get a top control point of pressure or any part of his game really started.
Right.
Like every time that he would get a position or he would try to start working or get out of something that Boogie was presenting, like you said, boom, right into something else. We're advancing. We're getting back to the clinch. We're regaining guard control. It was impressive.
Right.
It was good across the board.
I'm watching this, and I'm like, man, Boogie's he's putting it on. Like Jake Shields, he's really not getting a whole lot of pass attempts going. His Boogie was doing a really good job with his butterflies, keeping him in and getting that pressure away from him. And then overtime started, and Jake Shields started dominating. And I was like, oh no.
I was thinking the same thing too. I was like, is this is where it's going to end in OT? I honestly thought when Shields had a back. Was it bad? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I got a couple times. I was like, oh my god, this is getting close. But,
and so Jake Shields, he really controlled really well. I thought he could have finished with a rear naked choke, and Boogie tried to maximize on some back control as well. It wasn't working. He switched to spider web when it became his turn again.
Yep.
And boom, that was all she wrote. It was beautiful. Sug 11. Yeah, pretty good event. I'm excited for the next one.
I do have a question. The other thing I want to talk about with Slug 11, and this is kind of just across the board grappling in general. It's more of a question. I don't know. I guess people that are listening, you could comment on as to how you feel about this, and I'll ask you right now how you feel about it. So, grappling becoming its own sport. We get all these other, we have got SUG, right? We also have got some other mainstream grappling shows going on. How do you feel, or do you like seeing these MMA fighters fighting high level grapplers? Because I want to do you feel like all right? So on SUG, right, we had Al LaQuinta, right, and Platinum Mike Perry. And it ended up going into the decision was decided by Fastest Escape.
Right.
And the one, I think it was it LaQuinta had a really deep armbar at the very end, and I think Perry got out of it. And I think he was awarded the match because of Fastest Escape.
Yeah.
So it's nothing against the grappling that takes place there, and I understand the name draw for when you have two MMA guys going against each other.
Right.
But when you get them going against a top level grappler, it seems like it just looks good on paper.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly how I feel about it. And I don't want to try and throw any shade at any of these, people that are competing in these matchups. I'm just telling you how I feel from a fan's point of view. And I have no interest in seeing Gary Tonin grapple Dustin Poirier. I just don't. I love both of them in their respective MMA careers. I love Gary Tonin's grappling career. It's a squash match, and I don't have a whole lot of interest in seeing it. I want to see the high-level matchups. I want to see the competitive matchups. It's not a competitive matchup.
Yep.
And I don't see how anyone can really sell it as such. We can talk about how tough Dustin Poirier is, and we could talk about, his, his no-quit attitude or however you want to try and sell it, but in a straight grappling match, it's no competition. And yeah, I don't have any interest in seeing it. And you're right, I think it looks great on paper. It's a good way for promoters to try and create revenue in sell grappling tickets, where it has been notoriously difficult to create revenue and sell tickets in grappling. So I get it. I understand it. It's just not working on me as a grappling fan. I'm not buying that ticket.
One of the things that I think is essential with this, and I've seen this now for personally for a minute. One thing you will see over and over, time and time again, is we're not really going to get the best grappling match in that match in general, because the MMA guys, they have a career, they have contracts. Most of them are allowed to compete in these grappling competitions while in their contract. That being said, they're not going balls deep on heel hooks. They're not letting their arms pop, things like that. If it's tight, they're going to tap. And when you get a guy that could just throw in a tight submission, like that, it's what's the, they're going to tap quick. They're going to tap before it's a thing. And a lot of times that's why we're seeing we saw a really quick match with this, and it's when it's longer than a couple of minutes, I feel like the grappler more often than not is just kind of, trying to extend it, kind of play with them a little bit, kind of get some time in. Right. But it always kind of ends the same way. I'm more interested in seeing seeing LaQuinta and Perry. It's kind of different because they're both from the same background. Right. They're in a grappling match, right? I wasn't too thrilled. This isn't with SUG, but in the same vein, there was just a friggin' sumo match between Rumble and Blades,
Oh, that was bizarre, yeah.
That was incredibly bizarre. That whole event was bizarre.
Was that SubStars?
Yes.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, but it's I don't know, man. I feel, so I guess we should just ask our audience, too, is anybody out there really enjoying seeing, Gordon Ryan roll against Alessio Oleinik? Are we is that really
and that was
selling tickets?
That was the the highest level competition one that's been out there. Like him versus Gabriel Gonzaga. I get Gabriel Gonzaga's, he's a black belt, but I mean,
yeah.
Let's not.
I don't even want to bring that one up because I feel like that was one of those things. It's so cool that he gets to do that as a person, right? But like, you know, as a fan, I don't think anybody was looking at that being like, oh man, Gonzaga's gonna get him.
Right.
Nobody, nothing against Gabriel Gonzaga.
Right.
But we're talking about generational differences. Whether we want to, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're talking about technicality differences too. I mean, one guy's the best in the world, and one guy was a amazing top-ranked heavyweight MMA fighter for the longest time, who was also a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in his time.
Right.
In his time, we have one guy who's in his prime. One guy, with all due respect, is not in his prime. You know, I don't even understand what that. You know. And honestly, I didn't know many people that were like rushing to buy tickets to see that either. No. So the idea of doing it for ticket sales kind of seems really weird. Because I know people are like, I've seen more criticism than I've seen people being like, oh, sweet, man. You know, this is going to be great. I can't wait to see, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, at least with Oleinik, like there was maybe a little bit in the back of someone's mind. You know, it was in the back of my mind. I'm like, maybe he'll catch him with something. You never know. Oleinik's got some, you know, freaky deaky submissions, you know. But yeah. Anyway, but let's move on to SubStars because that happened.
That was a shit show.
It was a huge event. Yeah. They had a lot of high profile names on it. It was headlined by Gordon Ryan versus Tex Johnson. Mm-hmm. And well, first of all, the matchup was, you know, it went how, you know, most people thought it was going to go. Yeah. And ended with a Gordon Ryan arm triangle. I don't know how long he put his knee on his neck for. He said he was going to do it for minutes. I don't know if the match lasted that long.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gordon Ryan is still the best. He's still the best. What else is new? But the real news is that SubStars is going bankrupt, and they said that they did not create enough revenue to be able to pay the fight purses.
And if they do get paid, was it? This could be an earlier article I read, so I don't know if it's been updated. So I apologize now if I'm wrong. I think I read that they're saying that there's going to be literally no revenue coming in until April, and even then they're going to be able to pay hopefully 10% of the fighters' purses.
Yeah,
which is. I mean, I'm pretty sure if what Gordon Ryan really said about Tex Johnson and how much he was getting is true, he's not getting paid anything. Like, you know, and I mean, I imagine Gordon Ryan's like revenue. I mean, his revenue, you know, his fee for that probably wasn't cheap, but at the same time, with a new event like that, I'm sure a lot of these guys weren't, you know, charging top dollar to compete.
Right.
I think that. You know, especially within the jiu-jitsu community, with as many high-level names as they had and people, it seems like there was a lot of promise going into it.
Yeah.
But again, you got Gordon Ryan and Tex Johnson, right? That if it wasn't for the trash talk and social media going behind that, I don't think anybody would have really wanted to see that again. We talked about this in the previous podcast.
Yeah.
I still think that it's kind of crappy that he got another shot. With everything going on.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that Gordon handled him, you know, as we all knew he was going to.
Right.
But then on the same card, you had that freaking sumo match. Like, I can't get over it. All right, so you had I get trying to bring in, it's SubStars, right?
Right.
So SubStars, in my mind, means submission stars.
Right.
So let's bring fucking sumo athletes in, because that makes sense, right? So, okay, granted, we bring in, like, you know, I don't even remember the guy's name. I want to say Takeshi, but I think I might be getting confused with Takeshi 6ix9ine. So yeah, I know. So I don't remember the sumo guy's name, but he's a recent world champion. I think he just won the Basho or something like that. But he's known. So he comes in and he goes against both Blades and Johnson.
Right.
I mean, it was two different sumo champions. I think. And they obviously beat them at their own game
quite handily.
Mm-hmm. Now, spoiler alert, there was no submissions. So then it only makes sense to take the two UFC fighters, put them in sumo gear, which, by the way, if you watch the match, I've never seen. Anthony Rumble Johnson had severe wardrobe malfunctions going on with his junk, essentially. So that in and of itself was like kind of painful to watch because like I don't know if they didn't try this stuff on beforehand in the back or what was going on, but like he kept having to like fix himself. So we got to watch Anthony Johnson fix his junk for an unreasonable amount of time in sumo attire.
It was not
no submissions. And then the matches itself were like they were seconds, which is sumo.
Yeah,
which is sumo.
Right,
I mean,
it's supposed
I
to be like a
appreciate
blitz.
sumo.
Right.
I like sumo. I appreciate it. I watch it, but I watch it when I want to watch sumo.
Right.
When you're watching a submission event. So the fact that they're going bankrupt, it's not surprising me so much because it seems like it had a lot of big talent names on the card, which probably came with a lot of money attached to it, and the events themselves weren't great. You know, I'm just like it wasn't great. Like
right.
I don't, who else was on the card? I was lost at a lot of.
I think Roberto Jimenez might have been on the card. I think he maybe fought Gaudio because Keenan was supposed to fight Gaudio, but he dropped out. And I think Roberto Jimenez won. He's having a great start as a black belt. Yeah, that was a gi matchup. I'm pretty sure it had some names on it. I don't remember exactly who, but it had some high profile names on it. But yeah, they're going down, and it's it's unfortunate. I don't know exactly how they handled things behind the scenes, but I do know that we've talked about this before. It's tough, making money
absolutely
in jiu-jitsu promotions,
which is why I feel like when you do something like this, you gotta. I mean, it's thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
And then there's literally just throwing the fucking box up.
Right.
Which is like I feel like, kind of what we saw. I think that they might have went too far. And also just in general with having a main event is like a match that we've seen before a couple of times. Is just, I don't know. It's like going on the social media trash talk. And I think this was their first and only event, correct? This was it, right?
Yeah,
this
that was
their
it.
takeoff
One
event
and
and they're done. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, one and done. So another thing that's been going on that I think is really fun, and it's getting a lot of buzz, especially for the gi scene, which I think is great for them, is the Mikey Musumeci $10,000 challenge, which is so great. Kyotera just has such faith in his boy that he's like, I'll put up 10 grand. Anyone, any weight class, you put up 10 grand, try and beat him.
Yeah, I honestly think that's pretty damn fun too.
It's so great.
It's kind of a throwback to the old martial arts challenges. Like, I mean, granted, it's not style versus style. Like it used to be. But the fact that we're doing this thing where, like, we had the Nicky Rodriguez challenge, which I thought was cool too. Right, like, okay, and because we had all these guys come out to take him down, nobody was able to. Right. I mean, take him out, nobody was able to. And now we have Mikey Musumeci, and now I love how we had a challenger.
Right.
It was.
I think it's still on. I saw something about it.
Really?
I think so.
Oh man, really? Is he gonna put it up?
I guess so. Or maybe,
I don't hold much faith in this because of his recent. Record
of odd behavior, but it's supposed to be Erbirth. It's supposed to be Erbirth, and then I think he backed out, and maybe it's back on again. But I would, if that matchup goes down, I would love to see it. I would love to see it with both of them, competing in earnest. I don't want to see Erbirth realize that Musumeci is, working his way to the back and not. Kind of give up. Yeah, because he's gonna lose against a smaller opponent. So that would be terribly unfortunate. If the matchup happens, like I said, I hope they compete in earnest. And
who would you like to see go against him? If you would like to see anybody put up this money to go against him,
man, I mean, from a totally selfish point of view, just because I want to see him in high level matchups. Alex Eklund, why not?
Ooh. Okay.
I think they're close enough in weight. So yeah, I would love to see that. And who else? Who else in the gi? He's beaten everyone. That's the thing. Is like Paulo. I don't think he's gone up against Paulo Miao. He's beaten Joao a couple times.
Paulo. Yeah, Paulo.
So yeah, I think that would be good. I would like to see Eklund. I would like to see Paulo. And as far as big guys, I'd like to see him in there with like Marigali or Kynan. I think that would be really great. I think that'd be really exciting.
All right.
What about you?
I honestly think I would love to see him go against Paulo. Just because honestly, if in gi, that's gonna be. I would just love to see that. Match.
Yeah.
That's one I would love to see.
Yeah.
That I think you kind of hit the nail right on the head with that one. I'd like to see Eklund get a roll at him. I would also in gi. Honestly, I would like to see Urbith go. I hope if it does go through, I would like to see that. Like I said, I just don't have a lot of faith in this happening right now. Because we were on and then we were off. Now I'm back on again, so we'll see, I guess.
Yeah. So what else?
Keenan,
man.
Keenan and Gi, that'd be a good
Keenan
one.
and Gi would be super exciting. They were maybe going to have a matchup, I think, at Pans, but they in the absolute division, but it didn't end up working out. They didn't face off against each other. And Keenan was really funny. He's like, I'm just glad I didn't go up against Mikey because it would have been super embarrassing if he baramboloed me. Oh man, which kudos to him, man, because he lost his finals match for was it his division? I think he lost his division,
so.
and he
Triangle? Right?
yeah, he got triangled, and he had never been triangled in competition before, and he actually talks about his triangle defense that he's hangs his hat on it.
And that happened.
He got caught.
It's a triangle.
And
I'll get you.
Yeah. And it was really interesting because you've heard the conversation with him and Josh Hinger, and them saying that Hickson and Elio, comparatively they're probably strong purple belt level, which is I understand it sounds like a very disrespectful thing to say. I also understand the heart of what it is that they're saying, that the techniques evolve.
Yes.
And they are applying those techniques at a much, 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 much higher level than a purple belt level. But the textbook of things that they, I guess, were working they're saying is like kind of what people at brown and purple belt would be focusing on and trying to perfect at this point, I guess, is what they're trying to say. But that being said, Henzo really, really relished that triangle. I was listening to an interview with him, and he was very happy about that.
Because he had some things to say regarding those comments.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So obviously, I get what they're saying though, and this kind of goes back to this thing that happened. It wasn't really too long ago. It's been a minute now. But there was like an old school black belt who was he had taken like a 10-year hiatus, and I can't remember his name. I'm not naming him just because for whatever reason I just don't remember his name. You can look this up. He was an MMA fighter. He was a well-known black belt at the time, and he came back into Jiu Jitsu, and this was right around the time where the Danaher squad was kind of coming up. Things had changed. The game changed. Competition had changed. Even in gi, leg locks are being thrown around more free. And he wanted to, I don't know if he actually followed through with it, but he wanted to restart over from purple belt. And that's something that resonated with me immediately when Keenan and Hinger were talking about it.
Right.
Because I thought about that myself as listening to it and being like, huh. The second they said that, I went back to that whole thing. And in the community at the time, a lot of people were like, that's disrespectful to your master.
Right.
You work towards that. You can't just throw it away. Just train and get better. Put your ego at the door. Which, honestly, at the end of the day, that's how I feel about it.
Right.
Black belt isn't necessarily a measurement of how you roll in competition. It's a measurement of your knowledge. You may know millions upon millions upon millions of techniques in the gi that nobody else knows. And the best competitors in the world could walk into your gym and you could show them stuff that they've never seen before, and they could take those tools with you and use them in high-level competitions. Does that mean you are a world champion grappler and you're going to win those same high-level competitions? Absolutely not. There's so much more that comes into being a competitor than comes into being a martial artist. They're martial arts, like, again, I've said this, like, I'm Sally broke a record, I probably said this on the podcast. Martial arts is, that's the way of life. And competition should be the consequence of loving the way of life.
Right.
Not the reason for loving the way of life. Or trying to do martial arts. So I can see what they're saying, because comparatively, the way that it's changed now, I mean, hell, I've seen it in our program. Like, we've stepped up our game with belting. I look at my students differently. I belt my students differently because you have to. If there's students that want to compete, they need to go into it prepared. There were times where you could get a blue belt early or a purple belt early and go into competition. Shit, now, no. There's killers everywhere. There's killer white belts. You got to be well-rounded. It takes time. If you're not willing to set your ego aside and take a step back and say, look, I really need to do this, and I need to focus on the new techniques and what's working and what's not working and build on my game, you're going to feel like that. You're going to feel like, oh, I need to start over. You don't need to start over. You just need to fucking train hard. That's my opinion.
Right. I agree with that. I agree with the idea of like, oh, I'm going to go back to purple belt is kind of silly. Like you said, just
train hard,
keep your rank and keep on training harder. Focus on,
man. It's like, you just have those days, there's days you're on, days that you're off. But I can see what they're saying, because back then compared to now, their black belt game isn't the same as like a really high level black belt is now. Right. And they were also training for different things though.
Right. Exactly.
And different opponents.
Yes. Yeah. And like you're saying, they were training for different things, and I think that's something that we always have to keep in mind when we talk about quote unquote the new school versus the old school, which is a conversation that I'm not really a fan of. I think the category should be what's effective and what's not effective.
Absolutely.
But you're right. They were training for different scenarios, and the techniques that they were focused on were applicable for those scenarios. And that's. Sport jiu-jitsu has expanded it, and now the lexicon, the encyclopedia, the dictionary, it's all expanded. And once again, like I said before, I understand the feeling of disrespect too, because when I hear it come out of my mouth, I sound disrespectful.
Yeah,
so I get
absolutely.
it. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, but it's across the board. There's just a difference in level from when it started to where it is now, and that's a fact. But the new school guys, I'm not trying to feed in that argument, but newer school guys that are coming into jiu-jitsu now and just familiar with jiu-jitsu as it is now, do need to realize that the old school guys were training for the first ever Vale Tudo tournaments. They were training for self-defense. They were trying to take their art of Brazilian jiu-jitsu and make it apply to being effective towards all other traditional martial arts. Martial arts itself has evolved. We have MMA now, which is destroying traditional martial arts.
Oh, God.
All right, we're mixing the best of the best techniques together, and you're giving it to the best athletes in the world. Things are going to change. It's going to happen. When you had one guy doing the same leg drag pass, and everybody was traveling from the world to learn from this one guy that had the double leg drag pass.
Right.
He had the best leg drag pass, for sure. But now with social media, the internet, cross-training, all these things that have come to light, there are so many different practitioners that learn the one technique, and it gets filtered down through millions and millions of practitioners, and the end result is going to be the absolute one version or the 6 versions that work better than all the other ones.
Yeah.
We have more. We have more because we have more practitioners. Our community grew. So it's to be expected. So just like there has to be respect, there also has to be the realization from the other community that things have changed. So it's a two-way street.
Man.
You got to travel both roads.
Yeah. So we're just about out of time. We got about 3 minutes left here before we gotta pack up and get out. So I guess just a quick recap. Sug 11, 10th Planet took it. Well, 10th Planet, yeah, it was 10th Planet. It was Kyle Baim and Vinny Mag. Vinny Mag reps 10P most often when he competes. Even though I know he's got his own team, but I think primarily when it's competition time, he tries to go out and train with them.
He's flowing the banner quite often, yeah.
So yeah, they won. It was $25,000. They took home 25 G's. No shame in that.
No,
They had the right
sweet,
game plan for it.
They were happy. Made them look good.
Yeah, they. Kyle said Vinny has never been submitted in 14 years.
Yeah, that's. I forgot. We didn't even touch on that.
Yeah.
But we'll close. We can talk about that right now.
That's insane.
It is insane.
So and then Vinny said Kyle has the best EBI OT game on the planet. So their strategy was
finally gonna get to see Gordon and Kyle roll,
which is gonna be. I think that's third coast grappling.
Yep.
That's gonna be insane.
Yep.
But yeah, so their game plan was put Vinny Mag in first. He's not gonna get submitted because he hasn't been submitted in 14 years.
Which was true.
They're gonna go into OT and then they're gonna put in Kyle Baim. He's got the best EBI OT game in the world, and it worked out perfectly.
Exactly. Game planning.
Game planning. Yeah, it was not terribly exciting, but the shit worked, and they took home $25,000. Good for fucking them. Love the rivalry that's budding between Nikki and Kyle and Vinny. I think it's really fun for the sport. And hell yeah, that's the recap. Tom, got anything to say?
No, not really. This was I'm excited about seeing Kyle get a shot with Gordon. If you've listened to the podcast, I've talked about it a couple times.
Yeah,
it's something I've wanted to see. So he's been on a roll right now, and I think especially with Ryan coming off of what just happened with Pat Downey, which is something we could talk about in another episode. This is a good time for Kyle to get in there and give it a shot, because I think he's going to make him work, and I think we will actually have. We might see some shit that we didn't think we would see. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I got my faith in Kyle. So.
Yeah. It's going to be a good matchup. All right, we're going to see you next time. Next one's going to be a big one. So,
yes, it is.
Tune in. All right.
All right.